welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making one type of Christmas cookie. I bake cookies pretty much every year. I'm getting a super late start this year. So normally I will bake maybe 4 to 7 different types, and I'm barely starting on my first one. Due to the space that I have, and I'm missing like my mixer, my food processor, and a lot of other little gadgets, I've been paring it way back this year. So this is one that I'm going to be doing. It's a pistachio tuile, and this is a recipe that I get from Martha Stewart. I almost always get compliments on it, and I've been making it since 2011. So this is the cookbook. I will have it linked down below. I've used it a lot over the years, and what I typically do, I've used it so many times that there's even like egg on here, but every time I use a recipe through a cookbook that I own, I mark down when I've baked it, and then I'll add any other notes as far as, you know, if it was well received, if it was really difficult, time consuming, if I burn my fingers, if it's worth it, you know, doing it again. And that has been kind of useful for me. And then this way I can reference back to it. So the recipe does not call for very many ingredients. I'm going to be starting off with some butter, and the butter has to be melted on the stovetop, and then I'll cool it off. I am using Irish butter for this recipe since there isn't a lot of ingredients going on. I try to do the highest quality possible, and the Irish butter has more butter fat, and who doesn't like that in their cookie? So that's what I'm going to be using. I have 3 eggs, but I'm only going to need the whites, so I'm going to be separating that. And it is a pistachio tuile, so I'm going to be using pistachios. I do not have my food processor, so I am going to be chopping by hand, and I am going to chop it as finely as possible. I don't know if I'll maybe start with a knife, end with a mallet. It's probably going to be a combination of the two. It's also going to need a pinch of salt, as well as a little bit of flour, but not very much, and some sugar. I use baker's sugar for most of my baking recipes, and especially in this case, you are going to be mixing it by hand, so you want the sugar to dissolve. And I've also got a few other gadgets. Anything that has a cylindrical appearance, not too thick, you're going to want to use, and I'll kind of demonstrate that later on. And if you have an offset spatula, use it. I am missing that as well, so I'm just going to be using this cake server, and I think that's it for right now. I'm going to be preheating my oven to 350, and I just put the butter in to start melting since it does have to cool. It's not very much butter, it's about 4 tablespoons. If you have a mini food processor, this would take you like 30 seconds, no joke. You do want it pretty fine. These cookies are meant to be very thin and lacy, and you know, when you pulverize nuts and it kind of gets that floury texture or dust texture, that's kind of what will permeate through the batter for this. And it'll also color the batter slightly green, which for Christmas time or the holidays can be slightly festive. And if you are going to be doing it this way, get a nice heavy chef's knife. Be sure to hold the blade, it will give you the most control, and just basically, you know, rock back and forth. That would probably be the best method. And of course, just be careful. And this is kind of the texture that you're looking for. If you do have some small pieces, that's okay, but try to do it as finely as possible. I was able to do it only by hand chopping, and I would say it took me about no more than 5 minutes. So when it comes to baking, I like to prep in either glass or ceramic bowls. I don't really have a large selection at my disposal right now, so I'm just going to use a 2-cup measuring, which will be fine. I know how much batter comes out of one recipe. So in here right now, what I have are my egg whites, the sugar, and the bit of salt that the recipe calls for. And I'm basically going to, and I'm just using from my hand mixer, the whisk attachment. But you don't need to use like a hand mixer. This you can totally do by hand. It's, if you don't have like a fancy mixer, don't worry about it. You can totally do this without. So I'm going to be mixing this until my sugar has dissolved. And this is important, and this is why I like to use the baker's sugar or superfine sugar, because the crystals are smaller. And if you need to test, like if you don't know, like, oh, I don't know if the sugar has dissolved, all you do, just take your finger, kind of dip it in, and feel it between your fingers. If you feel that it's still a little bit rough or pasty, or that there's sugar in it, then you need to mix it a little bit more. Okay, and then when you've got that stirred up, you're going to add your melted butter. And just combine it. If you do have any sugar that hasn't dissolved, this will help it. Then once you got that incorporated, add your flour. It doesn't call for too much flour. There's only 2 tablespoons in here. And, you know, so it's kind of, you think, oh, this is, how many cookies is this going to make? Because this doesn't look like much, but, so the recipe says that it yields 60 cookies. I've never really counted, because by the end I've like already eaten a few, and other people have come by and picked up 1 or 2. And I tend to make them on the smaller side. I don't really know. I haven't seen Martha do this, but it says it makes a lot. I mean, I usually get quite a bit. If you're worried about, you know, I don't need that many, I actually have this tool, and I will try and find it for you. It's a recipe divider. Or multiplier, I think, if you wanted to double the recipe. So it'll show you the single measure, and then if you need help like converting your measurements of the recipe given to you, this is super helpful. Okay, and once that is well incorporated, you are going to add in your pistachio. So I'm just going to fold this in. Until it's evenly distributed. And then this will be ready to bake. Okay, so now for baking, I'm going to be doing this 1 sheet at a time. I don't have a double oven, and I don't really have too many cookie sheets. So, you know, obviously the more tools you have, the faster it can go. What I'm gonna do, I've got just like a coffee teaspoon, and I'm going to, and it is a loose batter. So if you're like, why is the dough so loose? It's supposed to be that way. And this is so it will be a little bit easier to spread. So what I normally do, and I use two things. I use a spoon and I use a tiny spatula. And then I'm gonna do 6 at a time. This is spreading pretty good. So I'm not gonna assist it anymore. I'm not gonna spread it around. Just gonna leave it. And I don't want to do too many at a time because when it comes out of the oven, it needs a little bit of forming. So there's only so many that you can do before they start to get hard. If they do, well, I'll explain that a little bit later. I'm using parchment paper, but you can also use a Silpat if you have it. And if you don't have either, I would really find something because otherwise these will stick. And then this is going to go into the oven, and I will show you when they're done. In the meantime, you need to kind of set up your area for when they come out of the oven. So get any short cup or whatever would work for you. I'm just going to show you what I do, and then you can mimic it anywhere you want. And obviously once you have more, then, you know. Okay, so this is the one wooden spoon that has a circular handle, and that's the only one that has a circular handle. So I'm also going to use this other one that has a circular handle. I figure I could put 2 cookies on each, maybe 3 on this one. You want as much space as possible. So what's going to happen when you bring the cookies out of the oven, you're going to lift them up very quickly, gently place them, and then kind of like tighten the loose ends so that it makes a certain shape. Okay, so then when they're done, I'm going to pull them out. And this is what happens with every first batch every single year. You're gonna get different shapes, and they're not gonna look so pretty the first time around. It does take a little bit of practice, even for me. You're gonna let them cool just slightly. About 20 to 30 seconds. You don't want them to get hard on the baking sheet because you're going to put them over there. If they get hard, you're not going to be able to bend them without breaking them. So for sure I'm going to put a few on here that will probably be okay. Normally I do use a Silpat. I just, again, I don't have it with me. And then you're going to drape it over. Close the ends. You may burn your fingers a little bit. I do think it's worth it. Otherwise, if you think it's too much trouble, then don't do it. You can, I mean, and you don't have to form them. You can just, you know, let them cool flat. But they do look really pretty when they're rolled. I would have a wet paper towel just to kind of clean off the edge over here. I'm going to pinch the end a little bit. If they do get a little bit too hard for you, you can stick them back in the oven for another 20 seconds or so. And the recipe will even tell you that. Now, because I only have one cookie sheet with me, I'm gonna wait until my cookie sheet cools. Otherwise, what I would normally do, have one baking sheet in the oven, prep the second one so that when I take this one out, I can put the other one in and it doesn't take as long. And then you're just gonna leave them here to hang out until they solidify, and then just put them on your cookie rack to dry. And then see, they're very pliable when they're warm. This one is obviously not a shape that I'm going to do, so I'm probably going to eat this one. You can make a little cone. You can, you can get creative with that. I'm just going to do plain cookies today. And then just to let you know, it does take a bit of practice. So once you're done, you'll just pick this up, slide them off gently, because these are still warm, but I am going to take them off so that when I need it again, it'll be ready for me. The thing you're looking for, you want the edges to be a little bit brown, so that again it just makes a nice it looks really pretty when the edges are like browned and then the centers are a different color. If you're thinking like, why does your batter spread? It could be a whole bunch of different factors. It could be your oven. It could be maybe your cookie sheet is slightly warped. It could be, like in my case, I'm using parchment paper right now and I didn't cut it to size, I just folded it. It could be that. I don't think it is. I think it's just my cookie sheet. And even, again, with practice and stuff, I don't know. Sometimes they spread, sometimes they don't. They just like end up in these weird shapes. Is it the temperature? I don't think so, because what Martha says, 350 degrees. So when I make these, the ones that don't look as nice, I will just set them aside on a small plate and have them with coffee or tea as a snack and save the good ones for Christmas Day. Or to give to other people if I'm doing a cookie tray, which is normally what I do. But this year, it's not going to happen. So if you're wondering, how do you store these? Normally I use one of those like snap Tupperware containers. However, again, it's just something that I don't have with me here. So the nice thing is that you don't need to layer wax paper in between these. They're not going to stick to each other in that way. So I usually do most of my Christmas cookies in tins. You can also do them in glass jars or Tupperware, but Tupperware I feel they would get stale a little bit faster. Now they do last for a bit. I mean, according to the recipe it says a week, but I've never had a problem with them lasting longer. So some of them really got just disfigured for me, and I ended up doing little cones, as you can see, just because I was getting frustrated that they weren't coming out fairly even. And I think I got one near perfect one. If I could, this one came out quite nice. So anyways, in my tin, I'm just gonna kind of lay them around at random gently. The kind of cool thing about this type of cookie is that you can even kind of, it's not a sandwich, but you can kind of nestle them into each other and they'll be okay. Just don't be, shaking the box around too much. And then that's basically how I'm going to be storing. thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that you got some useful tips from it. I will have linked below some tools that may be helpful, not only for baking, but just in the kitchen that you may use in the future. So please be sure to check that out. And I will likely have one other cookie video that I will be posting as well. So keep an eye out for that. I'll see you next time. Bye.